Hey folks, and thanks for joining us today. My name is Nefra McDonald. I am the Business Development and Strategic Partnership Coordinator here at Rocket Matter, and today's CLE is going to cover calendaring best practices. A few housekeeping items to cover before we get started. You will see on your GoToWebinar control panel a questions widget. Any questions that you have for me during the presentation, go ahead and throw them in there and I will do my best to get to them during our Q&A portion or while they're coming in. If I don't get to them, you will definitely get an email from me with that answer. The wrap-up email with the recording will be sent tomorrow at noon, so look out for that. And the CLE number will be given at the end of the presentation, so make sure you stick around to get that. This CLE is presented by Rocket Matter, and it's also presented in conjunction with Legal Fuel, formerly the Florida Bar's Practice Resource Institute. Both of our organizations are committed to giving you the tools to run a better practice, and we appreciate you joining us today. All right, so with that, let's get started. So how do you know what kind of calendar you should use? There are a ton of options out there, so let's analyze your calendaring options. I'm also going to be launching a poll in just a few seconds, so you should see that now. Go ahead and answer. So let's see what everyone is using. Before implementing any new methods or calendar types in your practice, it's really important to understand and evaluate what types of calendars each attorney is using. So it's smaller firms or ones with lawyers that are a little allergic to technology, the old-fashioned paper calendar might still be in use. Personally, I still like writing down the things that I have to accomplish in the day, even though I use a digital calendar. So paper calendars or planners might be your preference and might still be what you prefer. It doesn't require any training, it's inexpensive, it's easy to view at a glance, but paper calendars also have a lot of limitations. So unless you're a solo practitioner, somebody has to be constantly erasing old dates, inputting new ones, and with paper, there's no backup unless you're, making copies of it. If a disaster happens or a hurricane comes through and flooding happens, that calendar is gone. So that's a little scary. So everyone in the office also has to be able to view that calendar. So paper calendars can't really be accessed remotely, which is why a lot of people will use the big three, which is Google Calendar, Outlook, and Apple Calendar. A lot of these come standard in software that you purchase. So if you've purchased a subscription to Office 365, you'll have access to Outlook. And then if you're using Google to manage your email, chances are you're probably also using Google Calendar as well. Or if you've got a Mac operated system, Apple Calendar is probably what you're going to be using. So that's another good option, and they offer a lot of advantages over paper calendars. They're pretty inexpensive also, and generally simple enough that the most reasonably tech-savvy administrator or lawyer can figure it out without having to go through extensive training. A lot of these can be synced to your mobile devices and checked from anywhere, which is a really big advantage. But these calendars are still, prone to error. So when you're, for example, scheduling court dates, you've got to go through the tedious process of determining the initial court dates and then inputting the data accurately every single time. So that has to be checked and double checked pretty frequently, which is why a lot of people opt to use rules-based calendaring systems to help with those calculations. And then there are a ton of other calendar tools out there as well, things that will help you with scheduling, and we'll talk about some of those in just a bit. So about 43% of you use paper calendar planners, and 83% of you using the big three, about 10% of you are using other, and none of you are using rules-based calendaring systems. So that's really interesting. You'll learn a lot today then. All right, so a few helpful tips for calendaring. So an office-wide master calendar is a really good rule of thumb. Having one place where all of your dates are across the firm, regardless of the attorney that's working on it, is a really good thing to have. It ensures that you're not going to drop any balls or make any mistakes. Having a redundant calendar is really important. So yes, you may be using Google Calendar or Outlook, but making sure that that syncs to your practice management software is also a good practice. So making sure you have an additional copy of it somewhere else is very, very important. You need to have at least one date for every matter to ensure they're reviewed regularly. What does this mean? You don't want to have 200 matters in your system and realize, in 6 months that you haven't touched 20% of them. Having a recurring date to review your matters on a regular basis just to see where they are is a very good rule of thumb as well. Gives you time to see where a case is, maybe reach out to the client if you were waiting on something from them. It gives you a lot of opportunity to continue to move cases forward. The longer a case stays in your office, the less profitable it becomes. So you want to be taking in cases, getting them wrapped up as quickly as you possibly can, providing the quality and the outcome that your client wants, and getting them out the door. And as you tighten up your processes and do that well, you'll start to make more money. So making sure that you check up on your matters is a very, very good tip. Enter your deadlines as soon as possible with spaced reminder dates. So a tiered system of entering dates is a good thing, but let's attack that first part. Entering the deadlines as soon as possible. So as soon as you know that a deadline is apparent, whether you've been served with discovery from opposing counsel or a trial date has been scheduled, you want to make sure that you get those dates into the system as soon as possible. Otherwise, you may forget to do it altogether. So do that tiered system of entering dates. You want to do a reminder date, which is a first notice that the deadline's coming up. Do an urging date, where the matter is getting close and action has to be taken now. A warning date, which is a last reminder, a warning that a deadline could probably be missed if action isn't taken, and then the actual due date. Somewhere in there, you may realize that you just cannot meet this deadline. And of course, you have motions that you're able to file in order to get an extension and get opposing counsel to agree on that. And usually with courteous attorneys, it's done pretty often. So that's something that you shouldn't have to worry too much about, but you always want to make sure that you give yourself some time, because if that deadline is passed, there are big consequences to that. So make sure all your attorney and non-attorney staff are accountable. And what does that mean? Everyone should know what their role or responsibility is when it comes to deadlines, whether it's the person putting it in, the person that drafts the first draft of everything, the person that's in charge of reviewing those documents and making edits, and the person that's responsible for filing those documents. So everyone needs to know what their role is and when their deadline is. So everyone has to be accountable for this. And just because one person drops the ball doesn't mean everyone else is off the hook. Everyone should be keeping each other accountable as well. Definitely want to give yourself enough time to investigate and work toward deadlines. Some rules are pretty clear cut as far as, 20 days to file an answer. But there are other rules that are a little bit more ambiguous and may require more research, especially if it's the first time you may be taking on a case in a new jurisdiction. So make sure that you give yourself enough time to investigate and work toward your deadlines. And then analyze your procrastination. So failure to react to calendar is another field that the ABA takes into account when they're looking at reasons for malpractice. So even with the best technology or no errors, if you're still avoiding or dismissing deadlines or doing the work it takes to be able to meet them, there may be a bigger problem. So think about things like whether you're practicing in an area of law you're unfamiliar with or not too excited about, whether it's a client that you don't like, whether you're overworked or stressed. Those are all things that you may want to take a look at and handle those things too. Very, very important stuff. So let's talk about that master calendar. Let's dig in a little bit. So that best practice involves a centralized firm-wide calendar. So while attorneys, often have their own options of doing things their own way, including managing their own court calendar, every firm should also have a master calendar that's managed by a well-trained, experienced individual that's constantly being updated. So otherwise, dates are going to be missed, and attorneys who are assisting on matters may miss out on crucial information. So a good master calendar is critical for that firm-wide visibility, that collaboration, and that accountability. Firms should also consider different viewing formats on the master calendar. So considerations like whether a practice group or a particular segment of your firm, whether you have an Orlando office and a West Palm Beach office, whether those offices want to view their own dates. If that's the case, the calendar program should be able to have that flexibility so you can filter those things out. A calendar should also be backed up regularly, either off-site or in the cloud. So depending on what you're doing, if you have an on-premise system and your calendar is kept locally, you want to have a backup copy of that calendar every night at another location that is not your physical office. This is for reasons like, natural disasters, break-ins, fires, the computer server blows up. There's so many things that could happen. You want to account for those things so that you're not left scrambling. So make sure that's backed up off-site or in the cloud, and cloud-based backups are super easy. If you're already paying for cloud services, your cloud service providers should be doing those backups for you automatically each night anyway. If you're not sure about that, call them up and ask. They'd be happy to answer that, I'm sure. The good master calendar should also flow to or from matter-centric calendars. So if you're using practice management software, you want anyone that accesses a matter in your system to be able to see the relevant dates for that matter. So yes, you want that firm-wide calendar, but information should be flowing to and from the matter-centric way of viewing those dates as well. And it should be accessible from your mobile device, because the reality is attorneys are on the go all the time, and especially if you are a litigator, you are back and forth between court and depositions and what have you all the time. So you want to be able to get those alerts on your phone as well. So push notifications, reminders, alerts, those are really helpful things to have to make sure that you're staying on top of your deadlines. And a good master calendar, if you're using a technologically based one, should also have responsive text support. So if you wanted to call and ask that question about how often your calendar is backed up, you should be able to get a response within 24 to 48 hours. So really consider those things as you're looking for a new calendar or evaluating your existing one. So let's talk about workflow processes and accountability. So roles and responsibilities, like I mentioned before, for everyone involved with calendaring should be clear. So who enters the dates when they come in? Is there somebody that's going to double check calculations for deadlines? Have tickles been scheduled properly with alerts? Have tasks been assigned according to the upcoming deadline so everyone knows what their responsibilities are in order to meet them? The process should definitely be standardized across the firm to make sure that there's continuity in case staff changes. And when a staff change does occur, that you can easily train the new person coming in. Anyone should be able to change them. Or if somebody's out of the office or they're sick or, their parent dies and they can't be around, you don't want to have to pull them in the middle of a terrible situation to help you because you don't know how to train somebody else to read the calendar. It should be super easy, super standardized so that anybody can pick it up and everything can continue to move forward. Continuity is very important. Proper calendaring using case management should also funnel into easy billing. Why? It's part of productivity. You want to make sure that if you're already taking the time to put in all of these deadlines and all of the work that's going to go into making sure you meet those, that you're able to easily bill for it. Having to enter that information in over and over again is going to take up a lot of administrative time that could be used actually drafting documents that will get you the result that you need for your client. So good calendaring will also have the ability for you to easily bill for the time it takes to meet those deadlines. So nobody should be able to opt out of using the calendar because, again, you want that centralized firm calendar, you want a matter-centric firm calendar. So make sure those processes are followed through, everyone is accountable, everybody has to opt in. So the workflow for each matter should allow for everyone to know which step to take and when. And in case the calendar person leaves, the firm will be able to continue without missing a beat. So those are definitely things to follow. Those are workflow processes and accountability. So let's talk about that dreaded missed deadline. and look at some malpractice statistics. So here are malpractice claims by firm size. So lawyers have a 17% chance of being sued for malpractice each year, and it does vary by firm size. It looks like the group that is most at risk are the 2 to 5 size law firms, and 11 to 100 have a little bit of the risk distributed. But the largest percentage of the market, I do want you to notice, is solos. And so you really want to take a look at that and see that there's 33% chance of a malpractice claim. So that those odds are pretty high. And then let's break it down by practice area. So personal injury plaintiff side, it's 19.96% of those claims. Personal injury defense is 9.96. Real estate is another high one, 16.46. That's pretty constant. Family law is up there, 9.58, and estate trust and probate, 8.63. So what is causing people to file malpractice claims? And you'll see that all of these add up to deadline management and calendar management. So procrastination in performance and follow-up, failure to calendar properly, failure to react to the calendar, failure to know or to properly apply the law. That could also mean analysis of those deadlines, and failure to know and ascertain the deadline. Those are really, really big risk factors, and they're all related to bad habits and inefficiencies. So these are some of the bad habits that people are engaging it with, and you might be nodding your head if you have been in an office where something like this has happened, or if this has happened to you. So waiting to schedule deadlines, not doing that as soon as they come in, not keeping a centralized calendar or a backup. Somebody loses their paper calendar and out go the deadlines as well. Lack of research on local rules and rule changes, especially when you're practicing in a new jurisdiction or you're a new attorney. Procrastination or failure to plan. So not having a plan of attack to make sure that you meet those deadlines, and then deadlines falling off because staff changes or somebody leaves and or takes leave and they don't get reassigned, so the ball gets dropped. And then entering calendar deadlines on calendars one by one is another, big area for inefficiency, because if you've got a high volume practice and one person is in charge of entering deadlines, if that person gets service and has to enter in those deadlines and it takes them a couple days, you're already, 2 or 3 or 4 days sometimes into a 20-day deadline to respond. So this is also a big inefficiency that can really cost you some time and lead to really big consequences. So here are some horror stories. So there's a late filed notice of removal to federal court. So that's a big trap. If you don't file that notice, you can incur attorney's fees and all sorts of other consequences, not getting the proper venue that, would give you the best chances of winning your case. Certificate of review or professionals in some jurisdictions, the case can be dismissed without prejudice. And if the statute of limitations expired, you can't refile that. There's inadequate or late fact disclosures. You can, lose the ability to use evidence at trial. If you hire an expert too late, you've got to start these things 60 to 90 days out to disclose the expert, or they won't have time to prepare any reports. Missing summary judgment deadlines, those are really huge, and you might have to write off a ton of time, like 30 plus days of work. And then notice of appeal, if you can't fix this, you miss it. That's it. So these are really big consequences and things to be aware of. So it's worth it to start thinking about how you can modify your calendaring to make sure that you're implementing best practices at your firm. So here's the ideal workflow. Deadlines are going to be calculated as soon as they are evident and available. This should happen. A second set of eyes is going to verify that those calculations are done correctly. the deadlines and the corresponding tickles are scheduled at the appropriate intervals and assigned to the second set of eyes. So that's how that should go. And technology can help you with this. Instead of having to research and do all of those things manually, there are ways to automate this and make you a ton more productive. So the first tip we're going to show you is practice management software. So you've already got that centralized calendar that is backed up that you can see in multiple views. You can also see it in a matter-centric view as well. These will sync with Outlook and Google Calendar oftentimes. I know Rocket Matter does for sure. It will also sync to your Apple Calendar. Workflows and task management are built into this. So all of the tasks that are associated with you meeting those deadlines can be configured into customizable Matter templates that can get layered on depending on what the deadline is. So those are really helpful to have as well. And then you have organized matters and matter streams. It's going to keep track of your last activity in a matter stream, so you'll know when documents have been prepared, when tasks have been completed, and you can subscribe to this matter feed that can tell you and keep you up to date on the progress that's being made by members of your staff. So this is great for firms that are very collaborative as well, or for somebody that's working on a ton of stuff and you can't remember the last thing you did on it. At least you know the last thing that happened inside of that matter. And it also integrates with Law Toolbox. So for those of you that are not using rules-based calendaring systems, which seems like all of you, here's what Law Toolbox is. So it automates your procedural and custom deadlines. So there are the procedural deadlines that are dictated by the courts, and so those will be in the system for you to select from, or you can do custom deadlines as well if you're practicing in a jurisdiction that they don't have in their system, or if you want to customize it so that you're giving yourself a little bit more lead time, you want to incorporate your tickles in there, they can do that. You can easily update your calendars for all your team members when something changes. So if a staff member leaves, or if there is a rule update, you can update all of the dates in the system, either with a new owner or a new person assigned to it, or with all of the dates that have been changed. So if a trial date gets moved, you can do that really easily. Or if the rule changes, you can back out all of those calendar dates and put them back in with just a few clicks instead of having to go through and one by one change those dates. That actually increases your chances of error. So this is going to help you minimize your risk, and it helps you to qualify for maximum discounts and malpractice insurance as well. So for those of you that do use that errors and omissions or malpractice insurance, this will definitely help you save. The other part that this takes away and takes off of your plate is linking to the authority for each deadline. So if you're not sure as to how the folks at Law Toolbox have calculated this deadline and you really want to make sure that it's correct, it links to the authority. You can take a look at the statute and make sure that you, or the rule rather, and make sure that you read that. So they have a team of people that do a manual audit of these court websites for rule changes. And because, sometimes the courts will just post these rules in, really unpredictable ways. So Law Toolbox actually subcontracts attorneys, paralegals, and they also take into account client feedback as well. So if a client alerts them, hey, listen, this rule change is happening in 2 months, they'll go in, make sure it's changed. And if you already have dates in our system that are affected by these rule changes, you'll get an alert that letting you know that you have, these matters that'll be affected by the rule change, and it'll give you the option to navigate directly to that matter and go ahead and modify your dates to meet the new rules. So all really good things. So this is how your deadline management is going to be transformed. So before, you would be, spending time looking up deadlines and calculating them by hand, for hours and hours. And then after, you're going to be able to instantly generate these deadlines. And before, you'd be adding deadlines and calendar events one at a time. One person might be handling that, and it's, backed up, taking them days and days and days. Now they have the ability to do that in a single click to user and matter calendar. So whoever is assigned to that matter will get that on their calendar, and any matter that this is related to will have an update as well. And then before, you'd have to look up rule changes, make sure that somebody in the office is staying up to date on that, making sure they're researching, evaluating what you have in your practice or in your firm right now in terms of matters that could be affected by that, and then go in and update all of the events. So it's, you know, pretty scary stuff if you're not doing this. But with implementing technology, using Rocket Matter and Law Toolbox, you'd have another set of eyes that are going to be watching for those rule changes. So now that we've talked about the really stressful, scary stuff, let's talk about how to achieve some calendar zen. So we've pretty much covered this. You can't meet deadlines if you don't have the time to do so. So what about the rest of your day, your practice, and your life? Aside from having to meet those court deadlines, you have regular things that you need to do. You need to be doing consultations for clients and doing intakes and checking in on your cases, managing your staff, managing your workflow, and also finding time to live. So there is a way to stay organized and productive, but it just takes planning and having a plan that you're comfortable with following. So I'd encourage you guys to take a look at this and see if you can implement one of these calendar zen tips today. If you can do that today, guaranteed you'll see the results tomorrow. So first tip, take 5 to 10 minutes to plan out your day. And I typically do this at the end of my day. So before I leave here tonight, I'm going to take a look at my calendar for tomorrow. And what I'll do is make sure that all of my appointments are filled in the time slots that they belong to. And then I'll look at my deadlines for the upcoming week and make sure I'm planning blocks of time to work toward those deadlines or prepare for those meetings. I also think about the top 2 to 3 activities that I can accomplish for that day. And those are going to be my minimums. Those are going to be my best activities. And doing that allows me to really feel like I've accomplished something with my day. It's sometimes, I don't know if any of you felt this way, but you put in a long day of work at the office and you leave feeling like you've done nothing. There's no worse feeling than that. It's not very satisfying. It doesn't lead to happiness or continued motivation. So having those top 2 to 3 activities a day, and if you can check 2 to 3 activities off for the day, that means you've done something good. Also taking time to write down what you're grateful for at the end of the day. What went well? What's in your life that's good? Whether it's your family or your dog or somebody let you in during traffic this morning, or you know, having, you know, food on the table, a roof over your head, whatever, however big, however small, writing down what you're grateful for will actually help you feel happier and will keep you more motivated. And motivation is what's going to lead to you being productive and having the desire to get things done. So take 5 to 10 minutes to plan out your day at the end of each day. And then on a Friday, use 30 minutes to plan the following week. So what I like to do, in addition to looking at my calendar for the upcoming week and the weeks ahead, trying to think of the 3 best things I can accomplish in each area of my life. So work, obviously, relationships, and for me personally. So the work stuff is going to be pretty easy. You've got all of that on your calendar already. But if you're taking the time to calendar all of your work events, you should also take the time to throw things on your calendar that will further your relationships and your own personal interests in life. Again, goes back to being happy, right? So if your relationships are suffering, it's likely going to distract you at work. So make sure you're taking care of those, scheduling time to put in that phone call to your mom, she'd appreciate it, or to a friend you need to catch up with, or a colleague that you networked with a couple months ago and you haven't touched base with. All those things, those relationships are really helpful. And then you personally, so whatever it is that you need in order to function. Some people need to actually schedule meals because they will forget to eat because the day gets so busy. Give yourself some time to eat, even if it's 20 minutes, because that's all you can afford and budget for that day. Make sure that you're giving yourself that time each day, in the upcoming week. So taking the time to plan your day at the end of each day and then plan your week at the end of a week is going to free up that weekend so that you don't have to think about it. It's going to make your Monday morning more productive, and you'll be doing what you need to do to gradually tackle your deadlines, as opposed to feeling the crunch and the stress of having to scramble and meet those deadlines. Other thing you want to do is create a firm-wide process for scheduling and set boundaries on your time. So 2 important things here. First, create a firm-wide process for scheduling. So sometimes when people have access to shared calendars, people feel free to just grab any time that they want. What that does is it screws you up. If you spent Friday planning out your week and somebody feels like they can just grab time from time that you had previously scheduled, you said, yes, I'm going to take this hour, I'm going to get this done, and then somebody grabs that time, there's a conflict. Do you tell them, no, I can't do that consultation? No, it's likely that you're not going to do that because you need new business to come into the firm. So how do you keep things balanced? Setting those boundaries on your time. So one technique that a lot of attorneys use is setting specific days to do certain activities. So on Tuesdays and Thursdays, those are going to be the days that you do your inbound consultations and client calls. So your staff then knows if anybody calls in and they want some time with you, that they can schedule it on Tuesdays and Thursdays between the hours of 10 and 4, if that's the boundary that you want to set. But make sure you set it and communicate it effectively. The other thing that you can do is use one of these applications. So these apps like Calendly, Microsoft Bookings, which comes standard with the business edition of Office 365, Acuity Scheduling is another good one. You can use these to surface your calendar on your website. And when a person clicks that link, what they will have the option of doing is booking an appointment type with you. So if it's a consult link, you can schedule 30-minute consultations on the days that you're available to take consultations during the times that you would like to take them. You can also set it up so that you're scheduling buffer time in between, so nobody can book an appointment back to back. So in case one runs over, you're not running into another appointment time, or you're not running or dialing from call to call, meeting to meeting, which can also be really stressful and inconvenient. So make sure you're being reasonable with yourself and taking advantage of all the features these options have to offer. Another really great feature with all of these is that you're able to take payments through them. So time is money, and if you're not scheduling consultations and taking payment for it, you might want to consider it, because sometimes people like to take advantage of free advice, and that's not really a good use of your time either, unless you're doing pro bono work, and none of us can really afford to do that full time. So make sure that if people have to actually get some skin in the game and pay for that consult, the likelihood of you getting a serious client or serious buyer is going to be pretty good for you. The odds will grow up there. So firm-wide process, set those boundaries, and consider using one of these applications to kind of speed up and facilitate better scheduling for you and for everyone else at your firm. Try time blocking and the Pomodoro Technique. So the Pomodoro Technique is a proven and popular time management life hack. Don't know how many of you have even heard of this or have ever used it, but you see this picture of the tomato there. So there's like the little tomato shaped kitchen timers. So the main premise behind this is that you're going to be working in blocks of time that are typically 25 minutes long, that are called Pomodoro sessions. So when you complete a 25-minute long focused work session, no interruptions, working on a single task. You're going to follow that with 5 minutes of rest, of a break. So that task time, that 25 minutes, should demand your full attention to that one task. And every break is going to require you to step away from your work to take some rest. So the results of this is that you're going to have ridiculous productivity during those work sessions, and you can maintain it during longer periods of time because you're going to be managing your distractions and also taking the time to take regular breaks. So after 4 Pomodoro sessions, you're supposed to take a longer 20-minute break. So you do 4 25-minute sessions with 5-minute breaks, and then you take a 20-minute break. You got to step away from your desk, get some food, get a drink of water, grab a cup of coffee, clear your mind. It's not necessarily recommended that you use that time to surf social media or, pick up the phone and make a phone call. That's not a break. A break is literally doing nothing, clearing your mind, replenishing yourself. So you can use those longer breaks more frequently if you're working on really intense, complex tasks, or if you start feeling tired. It's up to you to listen to your body. But the idea is that you're eliminating distractions and you're eliminating the need to multitask. Multitasking is not very effective when you're trying to do focused work. And you'll see how much more you're able to get done. The other thing is time blocking. So when you're planning out your day, making sure that you're scheduling time for those Pomodoros or a block of time where you're going to do several Pomodoros in order to complete a single task. So try that time blocking technique to make sure that you're staying focused and staying on task to complete the 2 to 3 things you want to accomplish in that day. See how these things all flow together? So if you think that 25 minutes is way too short, try the power hour. So if that is too short of a time for you, the power hour is probably the answer. Yeah, I know some of you are probably familiar with this term in the form of a drinking game with the same title, but this is actually an hour block where you work on a top priority task and nothing else uninterrupted. And a lot of people like to start their day like this because it gives you a win to start off your day. And that win has the power to change your energy and make the rest of the day equally as productive. So if you schedule just 2 power hours in a day, you can get so much time. So how do you get your staff to respect the time that you're dedicating to a power hour or to a Pomodoro session? You got to set rules, boundaries, again, come up. No phone calls, hold my calls. No random questions unless it's a true emergency. True emergency is something like the building is burning down, or your wife is going into labor, or your client just got arrested. Not, I have a question that'll take 2 seconds when it can really wait another 45 minutes for you to get through your power hour, because the odds are it can wait. We had a webinar, I believe it was last week, with Nora Bergman on 7 lessons to earn more, stress less, and be awesome. And she suggests morning stand-up meetings as a solution to get those questions out of the way. So if you want to make sure that your staff gets their questions answered, that there's nothing in their way, that they have what they need to be able to accomplish what they need to for their day, have those morning stand-up meetings where everyone gets a chance to talk about what they did yesterday, what's on their agenda today, and what's standing in their way. And everyone just is standing up because you want them to be quick. They go around the room, everyone gets a chance to speak, to ask any questions. And if there are things in someone's way, you want to make sure you take care of those before you sit down to really power through the rest of your day. So taking control of your day, not allowing others to snatch time from your calendar without asking, those are good steps to take too. And then saying no to interruptions. So not really, spending hours in a time suck of social media and Facebook or Instagram, or, I know law firms like to get their presence out there and tweet too. If you really feel like that's a critical part of your job description, schedule time for Twitter. Set a Pomodoro, set a time for Twitter, and at the end of 25 minutes, when that alarm goes off, you're done. So take control of your day and say no to interruptions. Delegate where appropriate and have dedicated time to review with staff. So if you're using practice management software or a task management software or project management software, all of these are going to have ways for you to manage projects at a glance and also get really granular and make sure that everyone knows what the next step is. Make sure that you're not just drive-by delegating where you just drop something on someone's desk and say, hey, I need this, by, next Tuesday. And that person has to figure out what to do, especially if they're new, if they haven't been trained. You can probably do that with people that you trust and people that have worked with you for a long time, but it's really unfair to do that to a new associate or to a new paralegal or to someone that's a little bit more green and has less experience and expect them to do it well into your standards. Taking the time to delegate properly and appropriately is really important, because it's going to enhance your firm's productivity overall and the service you're able to provide to your clients. So make sure that you, during these times that you schedule to review with staff, so if you're scheduling those regular dates to review your matters, if you have a staff member that is assigned to those matters, pull up the calendar, see what's coming up for the month for that matter, see what's in that person's wheelhouse in terms of outstanding tasks for all their matters. Give them the opportunity to talk about their workload, give them feedback on the quality of their work, figure out if they're waiting on anything or if there's something in their way, and take care of it. And you always want to use these times to give support, to give constructive feedback, and to also think about rewards for a job well done. And those rewards and that time, that constructive feedback, although it may feel a little burdensome, it actually really does help you get better results. It fosters good relationships. It fosters positive morale. And so all of these things are important to making sure that no balls get dropped, everything stays on task, and everyone feels like they're an important part of the team and that they're contributing to the end result, which is to get your clients what they need and what they're paying you for. And last but not least, don't forget to schedule time for happiness. We've talked about some of these things, time with family, taking time for friends, exercise, meditation, meals, walks. They're all important. And make sure you're scheduling time to do what it takes to be balanced and to have healthy outlets for stress. All right, so now we are at the Q&A portion. Okay, so someone asked, do you have any advice for productivity and time management in a small law firm with an open door policy and a casual and more relaxed atmosphere? Yeah, so at Rocket Matter, we have an open door policy and an open office format around our office. We're right here in Florida. We're based in Boca Raton, and we want to foster a collaborative environment because that's where the best ideas come up. But you do want to respect when people are trying to get work done and have that productive time. So if people actually want to start implementing the Pomodoro technique, it actually works really well here. So if someone has that timer on their desk and someone wants to come up and interrupt and they see that that's on, they're respectful, they hold their question, and they back away. So that's one way to do it. You may want to have certain blocks of time on your shared calendar where people know that they can't interrupt. Those stand-up meetings are usually really helpful, and get those questions out of the way at the beginning of the day. And you do want to schedule time for collaboration. So if there's something that you need to work on together, put it on the calendar. So that way, people don't come and interrupt that focus work time. Our CEO has a nice ninja headband that he puts on when he's trying to do focus work. So if anyone sees the ninja headband, his office door is always open, but when we see that, we know, yeah, we've got to leave him alone. So, and I don't think anyone will feel offended as long as they know what's going on. And when someone does come and interrupt you, you want to make sure that you're respectful, that you're not, snapping at them because you're trying to do focus work. Like, that's not what you want to turn it into. You want to make sure that that you respect why someone would come and interrupt you, but also returning that favor. If you see someone else that's working on something that is your subordinate and it's not an emergency, always make sure that you ask if it's a good time before you interrupt or interject in what they're trying to do. Just, courtesy. I think that that's a good rule of thumb. All right, so someone else is asking, what is the pricing on Law Toolbox? So pricing for that ranges from $25 to $39 per user per month. But that does vary based on your firm size. So the number of users is going to affect the price ultimately, but it's something that you have to think about in terms of time that you're going to save. So if you guys calendar a ton of deadlines and you know what a pain it is when those things fluctuate, it may be worth it for you to think about the time that you're saving versus the money that's going out. And the good thing about subscription services is that it's actually a smaller spend per month, which actually does work better with law firm cash flow because you're going to have money coming in incrementally, and that way you don't have to put out a ton of money up front that's going to affect your law firm's cash position. So that's something to think about too. All right, folks, I don't see any more questions coming in. We'll be in here for a couple more minutes, so make sure you get those in. Just want to let you know too that Rocket Matter is a Florida Bar member benefit. You're always eligible for a 7-day free trial, and Florida Bar members get 15% off month-to-month pricing for life. We do have some summer specials available as well, so definitely contact one of our award-winning customer service representatives at 888-432-1529, and we will get you the information that you need. All right, so here we are. Your CLE number is 3096, and make sure you go to the Florida Bar website to register those credits. Folks, thank you so much for joining me today. Hope you learned something. Hope you can take something with you today and implement it, and it'll be sure to make you more productive, keep you a little bit more sane, and will avoid some costly mistakes. Thank you so much. You can email me at any time, nefra@rocketmatter.com. I'll get back to you. Again, the CLE course number is 3096. Thanks so much, and we will see you next month for another Florida Bar CLE.